In just a few weeks, President-elect Donald Trump will take office for the second time, working with a Republican majority in Congress that has a long to-do list. Tax cuts, mass deportations, reshaping the Justice Department and FBI, and lowering consumer costs. And how will Democrats navigate their role in the minority? How much will they resist Trump? How much will they try to find common ground? Well, one of those Democrats is Andy Kim, the groundbreaking new junior senator from New Jersey. He joins me now. Senator Kim, thank you so much for being here. I'm sure that still is taking some getting used to, right?
Getting used to the title, that's right.
called senator. You made history. You're the first Korean-American senator in the nation. How does that feel?
It all feels still very surreal. I mean, I had my two little boys in the Senate gallery, 7 and 9 years old, and to have that chance to be able to have them watch, it was a lot. I mean, this year is actually 50 years since my parents immigrated from South Korea to the United States. And the idea that we can celebrate our 50th anniversary of our family in America by me being sworn in as a United States Senator, it's beyond anything that my family could imagine. My mom called, we talked the night of my swearing in, and she was just in tears about just how emotional it was for her. So it's a lot to process, but I'm proud of this moment.
And then you were already sworn in when you found out that you were assigned to the desk of one of your heroes.
That's right. So, I didn't realize this initially, but, you have the 100 desks on the floor of the Senate, and the drawers, if you pull them out, you can actually see at the bottom, every senator that's used that desk has carved their name into it. And as I was looking through, one name stood out to me, which was Inoue, Senator Inoue from Hawaii, who, was somebody that, I grew up watching. I mean, that we haven't had very many Asian Americans in the U.S. Senate. I'm only the 10th ever. I'm the first from the East Coast of America. And for someone like him, who's a Medal of Honor recipient from World War II, served in the Senate for nearly 50 years, the idea that I get to use his desk was just so powerful, and just like really one of those moments where it hits you. You're like, this is happening, like I'm doing this work. So it's just a lot of history to comprehend right now.
And obviously he was a decorated veteran, as you said. You've already introduced your first piece of legislation, which is bipartisan. It's with Montana Republican Senator Steve Daines, and it's called the Ernest Peltz Accrued Veterans Benefits Act. Why was that important for you to do right out of the gate?
Well, this is something that I've been working on in the House of Representatives, really try to focus in on our veterans. I feel a deep, deep responsibility and duty in many ways. I told you, my parents were born at the end of, they were born during the Korean War. It was American service members that came to the defense of my parents when they were babies and their families. So my family could very well not exist had it not been for American bravery and our service members. So my family's always felt like we owe a debt of gratitude to our service members and our veterans, something that is important for the freedom of our family. And right now, I get frustrated when I see the challenges that veterans are facing. And, I just feel like in this moment of deep division within our society, within our politics, surely we can at least come together and say we want to support those who have defended our nation.
You obviously now represent the entire great state of New Jersey, but you mentioned that you were in the House, and there you represented a district that Donald Trump won twice, despite the fact that you also won as a Democrat. And you've worked under both Democratic and Republican presidents. Where do you think you can specifically work with soon-to-be President Trump?
Well, look, you're right. I'm a Democrat that won a congressional district that Trump won twice. I've learned how to be able to engage and also try to build coalitions in that type of way. And there definitely are some issues that I hope we can find agreement on and find work together. For instance, my district in New Jersey was getting crushed by the opioid crisis. Fentanyl has been a major problem And as someone who's worked in national security, we get so concerned about, challenges abroad, but right here at home, over 100,000 Americans losing their lives. A deep mental health crisis that we're facing, especially for our youth. As a father of a second grader and a fourth grader, I worry about their generation. These are issues that I know we've talked through. I worked in national security before, a lot of bipartisan concerns about American global competitiveness, about the United States and China, what that means going forward. I helped pass the bipartisan Chips and Science Act. I'd love to see a 2.0 version, something where we can invest maybe in artificial intelligence, other places where we can figure out how to be able to propel America going forward and make sure that the innovation of the future is one that we are able to generate.
We got a reminder of what it's like when Donald Trump is in charge. He's not quite there yet, but the reminder, of course, was when he blew up the bipartisan deal to fund the government. You ready for the next 4 years?
Well, look, I at least feel better knowing that I have a vote of 100, 1 out of 100 in the U.S. Senate, a vote to be able to review the nominations for cabinet, for judges, justices, others. And so, I mean, look, it's a challenge. I was in the Congress for 2 years when Trump was president before. I've seen with my own eyes. I've understood and seen the challenges that are going to come that I'm worried about. But I feel it's important to be able to engage right now more than ever. I've often been saying that I believe that the opposite of democracy is apathy. So when I see these challenges, then no doubt there are challenges ahead, but I can't throw up my hands. I can't say, oh, I feel helpless in this moment. Here's a chance for me to try to make a mark. Well,
you mentioned that you will have votes on the president-elect's nominees. That is one of the many differences between being in the House and in the Senate. You were one of the first to say that you did not believe Matt Gaetz, your former House colleague, should be the Attorney General. Is it possible, though, that you could vote for any of the big nominees, Kash Patel for DOD or Kash Patel for FBI, Pete Hegseth for DOD?
Well, look, I have had conversations with Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. I had a sit down with Senator Rubio. I'm still going through the process, and I want to make sure I'm doing it right. But those were good conversations where we were able to dive in deep. And so, I think that there are some nominees that are people I think I can work with. But I also am deeply concerned about what I've heard Mr. Patel say in the past and about, going after these, like he is being nominated for a role to lead an agency that he has talked about dismantling, talked about the deep state, and going after. I was a career public servant before in the federal government. I worked under both Bush and Obama. I served the country, not a party. And I worry about some of the tones there with Hegseth. I hope to have a chance to be able to speak with him, but some of what he said before about not thinking that women should serve in combat, some of the other allegations that we've heard about, deeply alarming. I worked at the Pentagon before, in the office of the Secretary of Defense. I know what that job is like, and I need to know whether or not he is up to the task, and so far, I have real concerns.
We are coming up on 4 years since Donald Trump challenged what had been the peaceful transition of power on January 6th. You cleaned up trash in the Capitol Rotunda after the devastation. We're seeing a picture of that now. Are you worried the history of that day has already been rewritten by Donald Trump and his supporters?
Yes. Yes, I worry.
What do you do about it?
I worry about this a lot because, the way I sort of talk about it is, our country, we have this great motto of e pluribus unum, out of many, one. And I've often kind of thought through, how does that happen? There's a missing verb there. How do you get from many to one? And it's so important that we have a shared sense of this country, its history, its definition. But we're losing sight of this idea that we're part of something bigger than all of us. And when I see what happened on that day, we saw it with our own eyes, those of us that were in Congress. The American people saw it. People all over the world saw it. And the idea that it's being papered over and that the people that attacked the Capitol rioted, that they're being talked as liberators, as as prisoners now that are being unfairly treated. We are a nation of rule of law, and it does break my heart. Every day that I go into the Capitol, I go to the rotunda, I think about what we saw on that day, and how we should always commit to never having that happen again. This nation is such a great nation, and we were brought to such a sad moment on that day. We should commit ourselves to never letting that happen again, but instead, we see that, unfortunately, being a different lesson that many are taking away.
Well, this coming January 6th will be different for many, many reasons. We appreciate you coming on and wish you a happy new year. Thank you so much, and congratulations.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.